All right, Len May. I'm not going to introduce you yet. I'm going to introduce you afterwards. First, I'm going to apologize sincerely. I have a lot of values. In fact, most of my values are captured in our company on our website under our 13 V's. Those are values that started with me. One of them is owning shit. The second one is not ghosting people. I really value communication. And as you, I'm sure, know, unfortunately, life sometimes beats us up and we fall off. And whether it's the gym or owing someone a response, it's not fun. So I am sorry that it took so long for me to get my shit together to go through all my unread messages and actually sincerely reply to you. And I'm so happy that you didn't say fuck off and that we're here talking today.
Yeah, no, look, first of all, being somebody that's neurodivergent, I guess, in a way. And second of all, an entrepreneur. And third of all, you know, an entrepreneur many times over, you're juggling a lot of balls and it happens. And
Mm.
I really believe in things that are not friction causing. So if the timing is misaligned, that doesn't mean that it's a no, it's no for now or whatever that is. And you're absolutely right. Responsiveness is really important. But, if it doesn't happen today, maybe we'll talk in a year. But the timing is always going to be aligned for when we connect. So we're connecting now. All good, man. I appreciate it.
I love that. So, that's a fun place to start before we get into all the notes I have. You seem like a really go with the flow guy. Have you always been like that? Is it something you had to learn?
Yeah. It's something you have to learn because I am not that person naturally. It's something that I have to work on a daily basis. I'm, you know, growing up in a household that was, I guess you can call it an abusive household. My room, like go to your room was a punishment. Man, that was solace for me. Go to my room
Mm,
and try to figure out ways that I can get my brain into different things that create that dopamine stimulation for me. And I was a kid that was a very angry kid. I lived with a lot of anger and aggression. And the reason why is because I'm getting it at home. So now I have to find an outlet. And I did that with martial arts and all that other stuff. But then I got out of that because I got interested in girls and didn't have time for martial arts. But what what I think occurred is all through, and even in my 20s, when I was a kid, I would get into fights, and my dad would say, "Hey, get in a fight, did you win and lose." It didn't really matter. That notion of getting in a fight was this
mm,
thing of getting love from him, and it was reinforcing this thing with anger. And I walked around with that anger. Brought into my first marriage. Nothing was abusive, but like arguing in a way that wasn't really conducive to a marriage, sustaining it. So getting therapy, I think, was really important. And then one particular session was my dad. The therapist asked me to bring my parents in. My dad started telling the story about me and how he would hit me and I wouldn't cry and I was a real man. And then it's like, oh, well, you try to take out my sense of emotion out of me and I'm not going to allow you to
mm.
do that anymore. And then we connected, we talked for a while, and that forgiveness, I know it's cliche. Everybody talks about forgiveness, but I'm not talking about forgetting. I'm talking about removing the emotional connection to those incidents. So letting it go, it's liberating. And that
Yeah.
allowed me to sort of kind of make a lot of changes in my life and shift my life into things that, yeah, I try to go with the flow and I still have it. I'm not perfect, but, kind of take a pause sometimes and respond instead of react.
Mhm. Yeah, it's definitely something to be learned, and it's funny. I feel like we either learn through choice or force, and most of the time it's force, right? Life just puts you in a situation or hands you something where you're like, "Uh oh, I have to really reevaluate things here." Let's come back to that because I do have notes regarding like your upbringing and whatnot. I wanted to just start off by saying like it's so funny how people can impact us so much in so many ways. Sometimes it's like a lesson that you take with you for the rest of your life. Sometimes it's just like, I needed to hear that today, and now today's a better day. You, for me, were a little bit of the former, because on one of our first chats, you were talking about ADHD, and you said, there's a book out now, but you said how for you everything changed when you looked at it as a superpower and learned how to hone that for me, and that struck such a positive chord with me that I've actually referenced it on this podcast in a few different episodes in the past. And I also have a stepson who's 10 and who's autistic, and so for me now, coming into this relationship, I've taken your words and I use them so often to remind myself that it's challenging, sure, and I have to learn a whole bunch of stuff in terms of how to deal with the situation. But this isn't a disability; it's something that, if we do it right, can be turned into something beautiful. So thank you for that. Also, how long did it take for you to get to that realization?
I never really thought like the scarlet letter, this diagnosis. When people tell you you have a disorder, you think there's something wrong with you. Oh, it means it's a disorder. But when you start really looking at it, if your brain works differently than somebody else's brain, we all think differently. Our brains all process things differently. But like for
Hmm.
me, it was learning about what is ADD, what is ADHD, what does it really mean, what happens genetically. I'm sort of a sciencey guy, even though I'm not a scientist, but I can hyper focus on things that are really really interesting to me, and that's part of the ADD. You can do many different things or you can hyper focus on one. And that was sort of a mission trying to figure out, well, wait a second. If my brain is depleted of dopamine and I'm always looking for the next hit of dopamine, what can I do to navigate around that to make it an advantage rather than disadvantage? So one of the things
Hmm.
that I started learning was I had a conversation with so many people that kept trying to tell me to focus. It's always about focus. I'm like, That's not how my brain works." Well, you can't succeed. You can't. So in researching and saying, well, what do you mean? Richard Branson had 400 companies, and I think he's a pretty successful guy. And he's a neurodivergent. And a lot of these people, look at the richest man in the world. He's proud and, pounding his chest about having Asperger's, and he's neurodivergent. So it can't be that detrimental. It has to be something that's an advantage. And I had this conversation with a person who wrote this book about the one thing. You got to focus, focus, focus. And I was like, my brain doesn't work like that. Well, what do you mean? And we started going into that. I'm like, well, I can see patterns in things that you may not see as patterns. They look like puzzle pieces that don't fit, but for me, they fit. And this is the way I live my whole life. So reflecting back, like, what is music and science and
Hmm.
consulting? What do they have to do with each other? Nothing. They're completely separate careers. But that's not true. To me, there's a thread, and it's not a linear thread. It's not a straight line, but it's a zigzag. It's jagged. So by me taking a piece from here, a piece from here, and a piece from here, that's the way I'm building those connections. And now I can multitask effectively if I have the right, guardrails for myself. But it's always a work in progress, and you got to, kind of pick your battles. I always talk about like my ex-wife, for instance, like, why do you eat the same thing for lunch every day? I'm like, because I don't need to think about that. I can choose this or just one, and that's it. And I
Yeah.
can use my brain power for other things that I'm doing. So it's just all in all, Chris, it's about self-awareness.
Yeah.
We're so busy outwardly, and we don't spend enough time inwardly. And I'm not talking about like I live in LA. I'm not talking about hokey and self realization and meditation. All that is great, but I'm talking about really being honest with yourself. As long as we start being honest with ourselves and say, all right, I don't have some of these things, but I'm going to lean into the things I do have, not focus on the ones that I don't. And that's kind of
Yeah.
been my philosophy.
I mean, that last point is so key, right? Like, time is our most valuable asset, most precious asset. And the more we do, the farther we get in life, the more finite time seems to have. Like, when you have one kid, you have only so much time in a day. When you have four, that time starts to diminish more and more. You factor in business, entrepreneurship, podcasting, whatever, the gym. that's why it's so important to be very intentional with the time. That's why people like Jobs had a specific outfit, because that was one less thing, like you said, to think about during the day. I wear black band tees and black jeans all the time. Why? Because it fits, it looks good, and I don't have to think about it. When uh, when did you actually get diagnosed, and how long was it before that to, oh my God, superpower?
Well, I was diagnosed when I was about 14, and
Mm,
but I always knew that something like, if you're sitting in class and you're so, and a lot of us are bored in class, but you're so bored and you can't, nothing, the teacher, like, you're not being stimulated. So what was happening with me, I started being disruptive, talking.
mm,
No, nothing major. I just talk and talk because send notes and talk. And I kept getting in trouble all the time. And they're like, he's an underachiever. That's all I heard of my life. I'm an underachiever. I think he's smart, but he doesn't pay attention. He's disruptive. And this whole thing that was going on, and at home, same thing. Like, I've heard this message over and over. My dad was like, "You're lazy. You're do nothing. You're lazy. You're do nothing." Well, guess what? When I'm in my room, I know you could only afford one half of the Encyclopedia Britannica for me, or the fake one. So I would read that because it's interesting. I'm like, I'm learning stuff, but they've always, this always was a voice that it's not enough. I'm not enough. I'm not enough. And it kept going on and on. And I think the superpower thing came later on in life when I started reflecting back. But
mm,
in my journey, I started saying, okay, I think I'm different. And it's okay to be different, because I had close friends. I had conversations about, well, how are you thinking about things? What are you doing? I'm like, well, what do you mean you're just going to do it? I'm like, that's the way my mind, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to try it. This fear of failure, the safety net, like, I didn't have that kind of thing. I had an idea and I'm going to do it. It worked. Great. It didn't work. Fine. I learned something. I started going on. And I think it's just your circle. When you start surrounding
mm.
yourself with people and you start having conversations and you're saying, okay, well, my mind works differently and I do things differently. Let me start accepting that in myself. And now it's like a journey.
Yeah, self-acceptance, love of self. That makes sense. Not just that it's a superpower, but that you're just happy with everything that compiles who you are as an individual. Okay, so we're gonna get deeper into all this stuff, but first, let's take a step back. And this will either be like the dumbest question ever or a good question. CEO at EndoDNA, podcast host, author, polymath, global speaker, entrepreneur, 10 patents to your name, many other concepts. Why are you talking to me?
I think that I like to do what I enjoy doing. And there are certain things about what I do during the day that I don't enjoy, but I have to do it. Like, it's a must.
Mm,
But talking to people like you, I enjoy it, because if somebody can listen to this and say, okay, I have a similar story, I can relate to this in some way. That's great. That's what I love doing most. If somebody would say, "I'm going to take away everything and I'll still pay you all this money," what would you do? I would still be doing this. I've always enjoyed speaking to people. I was when I was going to physical therapy school, one of the things I had to do was I was a teacher's assistant, or like a junior teacher, whatever you call it, as in a high school. And man, I love teaching, because I never was taught in the same way that I was teaching. I'll tell you, the day I walked in, it was like Martin Luther King High wasn't the best neighborhood in North Philly, and the kids were pretty disruptive. And I know, for people that can see me now, it's hard to sort of envision. I used to have really long hair, it's like good
me
quality
too.
hair. So I put my hair in a ponytail and I walked in the class, and I had earrings and all that stuff. And then kids are being disruptive, and I wrote AIDS on the board, and I got their attention. And somebody was yelled a slur at that time. I mean, this is the nine, I think it was 990 maybe. And I was like, okay. And I actually wrote that on the board. And I said to everybody, you guys yell out whatever comes to mind when you see this word. And I started writing all the words down. Whatever they said doesn't matter. And then once they paused for a while, I said, all right, how does this word relate to AIDS? And we had the discussion. And this is the thing that I think we don't do enough of. There's we filter ourselves a lot more and having conversations with people. Even you and I having a conversation, let's pretend nobody's listening. Well, I'm getting something from you. You're getting
Yep.
something from me, hopefully. And all of a sudden, there are people listening into our conversation. And if I can make an impact in one single person, that's what drives me. Like I did this thing with Tony Robbins, and saying, one of the reasons why he does what he does is because he gets so much out of giving that it comes back to him tenfold. And this is the way I feel about having these conversations. For me, that's giving and receiving. And I've learned more doing my podcast than I think I've ever read in any books or anything, because I talk to some of those interesting people in the world, and that's my education. So that's like my dopamine fix. So you're giving my
Yeah.
dopamine fix for the day. Thank you.
I'm happy it didn't fall into the category of stuff you don't like doing during the day. I feel the same way. Like I'm pushing 100 chats now for this podcast. It feels so good to be able to talk to these people that join me. I'm so grateful for it. People don't know who they're talking to or what they're getting to necessarily. They give me that precious time, and then we do the same thing. We have this beautiful exchange that's for us in the moment, and if other people see it or benefit from it, that's fantastic. That's a byproduct. Um, so I'm a big believer in communication, conversation. I was raised that way, and then for whatever reason, it's stuck. Like I don't see things in my feed that are completely out to lunch or that I agree with, and say yes or this is gospel. But it always elicits for me the reaction of that's interesting. I wonder if it's real. I wonder if it's not. Not a shut it down, not true, fake news. Just qualify it, discuss it. And I was going to bring this up later, but I think it's a perfect segue into this. ADD, ADHD, neurodiversity in general. Give me your opinion on kind of the conversation around um, what's real, what's not. True, proper diagnoses, misdiagnoses, overdiagnoses because people just want to sell pills. What is the world of neurodiversity like from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question because there's a lot of doctors and a lot of people online, and the algorithm. Once you start looking at something, you just keep getting all the stuff about ADHD and neurodivergence. There are doctors that are actually online that I've seen that are saying ADHD, ADD, whatever, is caused by brain injury. I was
Mm,
like, oh, okay. Well, I didn't have a brain injury. That can't be true. So I know what I know, and the fact is, and there could be other reasons, but there are
mhm,
genetic uh, markers associated with ADHD. They are studied, they are published. Anybody can go to PubMed or anywhere else and they can look them up. So this exists as a genetic predisposition that can be epigenetically triggered. Could it be from injury? Yeah. Most likely it's not. It's just something that your lifestyle actually epigenetically turns on for you. So that's one thing. There is environmental ADD that a lot of us have because it's dopamine. And the most addictive substance we can possibly have is we're worried about these, drugs, but it's our own neurochemistry that is really that we're dependent on. And nothing is more
mhm,
addictive than dopamine. And if we're finding dopamine from something, a device that we're pressing all day long and a ding that we got a like, okay, then everybody walks around saying, I have ADD. Well, yeah, because you're addicted to that dopamine hit, but it doesn't mean you really have ADD. It means you have this depletion of dopamine because you're not getting your dopamine fix with your phone or your computer,
mhm.
whatever device that is. And it's not the same thing as being neurodivergent. It means that, your brain's conditioned that way. And when your brain is fixated on dopamine, it actually sends signals that you need more of that. And if you're not receiving that, you're gonna suffer. But it doesn't mean that you need Adderall. It doesn't mean that, kids go to the doctor and say, I have so many of my friends' kids that are on these medications. And when I talk to them, I'm like, I'm not sure they're really ADHD. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not diagnosing anybody, but I'm not sure.
Mm-mm.
How did they get diagnosed? Well, they took a questionnaire. I'm like, okay, great. So now we have a questionnaire. Now you're diagnosed. You're slapped with a label. And guess what? We have a drug for you for that. Well, how does that drug make you feel? Well, it works sometimes. Now, if I don't take it, I sleep all day. I'm like, that can't be good. You can't rely.
Mhm.
And I'm not against medication, but medication maybe is a starter for some people. It's like, let's get it going and then figure out systems. But that's what we were talking about earlier. It's leading into what makes you unique instead of like pulling back on these things that are uh, that make you feel like you're less than. And this isn't the idea. Like, we've gotten to a point in medicine where it's autopilot. You come in, you answer a few questions. Oh, I think ADHD. And why? Well, because I know that this drug is approved. I know that it has limited efficacy. Great, that's secondary. But I know I'm not going to hurt anybody if I prescribe it because the FDA
Mhm.
told me. So we just go on autopilot and keep doing it over and over instead of doing the hard work to sort of create systems for yourself that'll help you throughout your life instead of relying on this medication. So I
Yeah.
mean that's kind of my opinion as it comes to that. Once again, I'm not a doctor. I've I've coached so many extremely successful, financially successful people, and there's a whole pattern. I can see the pattern over and over and over. And it just, shifting priorities a little bit, and it helps a lot. Not
Right.
for everyone, but for a lot of people.
I don't know if you'll know this or not, but are there any studies, are there any metrics that show currently like the number of people that authentically have neurodiversity, like ADHD, like yourself, like some of the people that you named before, versus the majority of people that are getting these drugs that have ADD because of their phones or lack of discipline or lack of focus or lack of attention span in a societally induced way?
Yeah, I don't know if there's actual studies. I'm not sure. I'm sure there's some studies that exist. I just haven't seen. I just know in my research, even from my book, in my research, there are,
Mhm.
you know, there mm, somewhere around 80% of billionaires in the world that had some sort of neurodivergent diagnosis at some point. So,
Wow.
people who are extremely successful financially maybe leaned into that and made it their superpower. And I do think it's a unique thing. I mean, it's if your brain really looks at and works in a way where you can find patterns when patterns don't exist, I think that's a pretty good advantage over some people who don't have it. The challenges, and when I talk to people, like, it's chaos in their brain. They don't know what to do. I talked to a guy yesterday. He told me he showed me, he's got a whiteboard on one side, it's completely filled out. He's got a journal, he's got a to-do list, he's got every single app, Notions, all this stuff, they're all filled in. I said, okay. I said, it's great that you're doing all this, but what action are you actually taking? And he goes, that's the issue. I'm getting ready to get ready. All the time, I'm getting ready to get ready. And I said, but when your back is against the wall, when you're running super late, which is most people with ADD, and you're behind, you have this amazing way, like you burn the boats and you're just going with it. He goes, yeah. I said, well, that's because now you're getting all this dopamine because you're running late and you're getting adrenaline and you want to get it done. What if you could prime yourself for that? Well, what do you mean?
Mhm.
How do I do that? I said, well, dangle a carrot for yourself. Well, how? I said, okay, you brought up the gym, Chris. So I don't love to go to the gym, but I go like 4 or 5 days a week. I'm not that gym rat. Some people are like, oh, I love going to the gym. I go to the gym because I have to. But what I do love is the sauna. So if I can get my brain to say, I'm going to go to the gym, I don't want it. It's already talking myself out of it. But at the end, I have a carrot, I have a prize. That's the sauna, which I really enjoy. I can get past the work of the gym so I can get the dopamine reward of the sauna. And that's the way that's the way you rewire your brain. You need to give yourself a reward system. So it's not easy, but it's not that difficult.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a cool point too about the rewiring of the brain because like we can do it ourselves. And the reason we know that, other than the fact that people have been doing it for a long time, is that if you're not doing it and you get a certain type of brain injury, the brain will rewire itself. The brain will go and change, synapses or whatever, and bring back different elements that may have been lost before. I like what you said. One of your lines, I've got mindset, talking points here was ADHD is not a deficit of attention. It is a different architecture of attention. I don't know that I have ADD or ADHD. However, I do know that when I was 17 and I tried shrooms for the first time, I almost felt like a door in my mind opened up to a whole new way of thinking that never closed once I went through it.
Yeah.
So obviously our minds are crazy powerful, can do things. Talk to me about this positivity and the architecture of attention. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, neuroplasticity is really what you're referring to. And the problem with
Mm,
neuroplasticity is that sometimes that door that's open, if you don't know, it closes on you and you're not utilizing it. And it's when people are doing psychedelics, and I've done so much psychedelics in my younger days without facilitator. It was just fun. So, but I was
yeah.
like, oh, okay. Afterwards, what does this mean? And I'm an analyzing type of brain, so I would analyze that kind of thing. But I've had so many different experiences that I don't know what it means, but you don't even need that. I tell my dad to avoid dementia and Alzheimer's. He's a righty. I said, once a week or once every 2 weeks, whatever it is, take a day, do everything left handed. Everything. Let's see what happens. He's 80 years old. He's sharp as a tack, knock on wood. He's great, but it's that neuroplasticity can be done in so many different ways. Just be comfortable doing something that's uncomfortable. And your brain is going to be like, it's uncomfortable in the beginning, but if you do it a couple of times, now it becomes comfortable. So you have new synaptic connections in the brain, and it's always rewiring itself. One of the things in my book that I wrote, it's rewiring the modern genius. And that's really
Mm,
what I think it is. It is reconnecting to your own self and how you actually think and leaning into that instead of saying, well, you know what? I like the way this person is. So let me see if I can model myself. You can't, because your brain doesn't work like that person's brain. No matter how much psychedelics you're going to do, it's not going to work that way. You're not going to rewire your brain completely to be that other person. What you're going to do is you're going to rewire your brain to be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. And that's the growth. And if you're stuck in this cycle, once again, I talked to another guy the other day. He called me for coaching. And I'm like, I coach sparingly. I don't have a lot of time. But he coached
right.
me. He called me for coaching, and he said, I lost my job. I did this. This is another job. This is the fourth job. And, I got to figure it out. And these people and these people, and they do this and I'm like, hold on one second. Before we even get into coaching and anything like that, I don't even know if I have time, but let me ask you a question. Do you see a common denominator between everything you just said? Well, what do you mean? I said, what's you? And it's you. It's you. And if you can't accept accountability on that, then you're going to kind of repeat the same pattern all the time. So sometimes you got to break the pattern and take accountability and then make some significant changes in your life. And some people just don't want to do that because they're comfortable. It's much easier to tell everybody, it's because of my ADD. Can't do it. It's my ADD. I can't be on time because, it's my ADD. I don't have a good sense of time. All true. But instead of you can't, like, try to remove that word from your vocabulary. You
Yeah.
haven't done it yet, and you're going to figure out how to do it. And you made a mistake. It's okay. You're going to learn from that and you're going to get better. And that's what most people just, don't want to take it. It's much easier to take a pill, going back to what we were saying before. Oh, yeah, I'm going to
Yeah.
take a pill. It'll help me. But it's harder to make major changes.
You got to put in the work and do the reps. I was just on a live stream with some of my team earlier, and we were talking to artists as much as possible, trying to offer free advice, free coaching once a week. And so many of them say like, how do I get successful? How do I do this? The answer is really easy. You just have to show up and do the work, and you have to learn and educate yourself and keep relearning and reiterating and let time do the heavy lifting. It starts with authentic creation, doing something truly for yourself, like you said, loving what you do. But then it's just time and effort, and there's no more to it. I love what you said. I love the mindset that you have. I have a I have the desire to do the same thing. Just talk, just have open dialogue, help people along the way. I have a guest coming up in the next couple of weeks, Phil Neely, who lives in BC and is a quadriplegic. I don't know anything really outside of that other than what my colleague Jay has told me. But he sounds like the type of guy who makes fun of himself. He calls himself the quad and stuff, like your favorite quad, but he is out there living his life. He is educating people. He's written a book. He is not letting a single day go by without pushing himself. And that's no different than what you just talked about. Just that remove those words from your library and just go.
Yeah, I think also it's a work in progress. There are certain
Mhm.
days where I sit back and I'm like, what the hell did I really achieve? What did I actually do? What am I actually doing? You question yourself, but it's once again, it's going back to being self aware. You're honest with yourself, and I give myself 24 hours to sulk. It's okay.
Mm,
24 hours I can go and sulk. And luckily I have really good people around me. My girlfriend's amazing. I have great friends and, people that you need to rely on. But you give yourself like, I think, uh, I think it's Tony Robbins. I don't remember. He said like, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional.
yeah.
You choose to do that for yourself. I give myself 24 hours. I'm going to go sulk. I'm going to be miserable. Something got fucked up and blah, blah. Next day,
Yep.
I'm picking myself up and it's done. I'm going forward. And it's this notion of being addicted or dependent on this feeling of trauma. And some people get attention from that too. So you get into this habitual thing of, oh, life sucks and it's bad. And then it's sympathy. Now you're a victim
Mhm.
of your situation. Now you get attention and now you get love from that. So you get into this cycle as well. But it's just trying to learn as much about you as possible. And I think speaking to other people and being open and reflective helps you to learn about yourself too, as well. Like there's so many similarities that we all have, and we're always looking
Mhm.
to divide ourselves. And if you can start focusing on what makes us similar, what makes us alike, what makes us like one another, I think we can go a long way instead of like divisiveness. What makes us different? I hate you, you hate me. For what? We're all part of the same
Yeah.
race. We're humans. It doesn't matter what you believe, what you don't believe, and this whole notion, I don't know how we got here, to be honest with you. I know I'm going off on a tangent that you didn't ask, but that's my ADD probably kicking in. But I just don't know how we got here. It's so odd for me because I'm an immigrant. Like I live in the US, but I was born in Lithuania. And I was born and we escaped from the Soviet Union. My parents, I was a kid. I was like 6, 7 years old. But to be in a country that allows you to have whatever belief you want, to be whatever you want to do, it's an incredible thing. And to get to a
Mhm.
point, Canada's the same way, to get to a point where we're in little tribes and little cliques again, and this one is against this one. It's just an odd place to be.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think that's a large part of why I'm doing this is because I want to have dialogue with everyone and focus on love and logic, focus on my core values. Because as you said, most of us have more in common than not. And when you start to really look at the other things that are dividing us, they're not a big deal. Like when I'm 46, when I was a kid, I remember my parents say, "You never talk about politics and religion." Why? Because we're not here to have an argument. And these people believe that, and we believe this. So let's not stir the pot. But the underlying principle that they taught me was it doesn't matter because the character of these people is great. And you know what? We love them and we want to go to their house. And when I was sick, they showed up with some soup for me. So who cares what they're like, who they're voting for, or whatever? Let's focus on all the positives around that. And I think we get there by having conversation and focusing on the connective tissues rather than the divisive ones. So, kudos to you. I'm happy, just to come back to an earlier point, that I can tell my fiance that her son, which we joke about, like, wouldn't it be funny if he is the richest of everyone? He ends up being the most successful. And you're like 80% of billionaires.
It's
So the
true.
fact is there.
It's true. I mean, you know, w- I'm 54, so I'm a little bit older than you. But I remember when I was a kid, when I was going to school, we had the slow class, and we had the nerds, and we used to beat up on the nerds, and all of a sudden now the nerds are the cool kids, and there is no short yellow bus and that special the neurodivergence itself has gone like there are people on the spectrum that are exceptionally well functioning. They have their own lanes and stuff. There are some people nonverbal and all that. That's true, but the spectrum is actually that. It's a spectrum. There's all kinds
Mhm.
of different things. And if right now, if you're looking at like Silicon Valley and the investors and the creators and all these other guys, a lot of them were the nerds that we used to like make fun of when I went to school. And now they're the ones with all the money, and now you get the money, and I get the women, now you get the power and all that stuff. So, it
Oh,
doesn't
wow. I've
matter
heard that.
anymore. It kind of shifted. So you don't need to be a rock star to be cool anymore. You can be the tech geek and you're just as cool.
Yeah. I'm so happy you said rock star. That word just keeps coming up. It literally came up in this previous call. And I had this aha moment on a podcast where I was talking to Frank Zumo, really well known drummer, also big believer in mental health. Um, isn't it funny that the word rock star is rock and star, and that the way I see it, to shine the brightest, to hit the highest heights, to be the best entrepreneur, to rise up, you have to have that solid rock foundation
Hmm.
is right there in the word. And speaking of right there in the word, I'm trying to teach myself to slow down and just really pay attention with everything all the time and ask deeper and deeper questions. I've never once in my life looked at Portishead and said, "Oh my God, port is head." Port, as in the French word door, the head is the door. What? How am I just realizing that now on this chat with you with that shirt?
That's pretty cool. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. That's a really good observation. Um,
The head is the mind, man. The head is the portal.
yeah. And I love that thing that you said about rock. It's so interesting that no matter who I talk to, the most successful people, you can be actors, it doesn't matter. Everybody wants to be a rock star. Everybody wants to be a rock star. There's not more of a shining star. There's no more, you can be a Hollywood, huge actor, whatever. Right. And then, had the pleasure of meeting some,
Mhm.
they all want to be rock stars. There's no bigger thing to be as a rock star, and then some rock stars want to be actors. So it's like what you I guess what you're not, you're always kind of thriving to be, but it's it becomes synonymous because some people are like,
Mhm.
you if you're a presenter, like you're not a musician, but you're talking to stages, you're the rock star of that. So we started using that for so
Mhm.
many different things because it is sort of the pinnacle of I think success.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's funny when we were speaking about this earlier, and when I brought up this same idea, it's that we were talking about artists who achieve really high levels of success and then aren't with us any longer, or who fall off, who aren't known anymore. Is because so many people, not just musicians, entrepreneurs, billionaires, investors, whoever, and maybe it's not even financial, it's just any like level of success, you get to that point thinking that when I get there, I'm going to have made it, I'm going to feel fulfilled, I'm going to be happy, I'm going to be whatever, but you're not, and then things go sideways or really bad or they end, and the whole time all you had to do was refocus on that, to go back to the beginning of this chat, that love of the self awareness, the solid foundation. And if you have that, then you realize you're not chasing yourself, you're chasing something else, your ikigai, your purpose, maybe.
Yeah, I think, and I need to remind myself of that all the time because you want to look at sort of where you are, what have you achieved to date? And I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
it's not, I didn't do these things, but maybe you can focus on what you did do instead of the things that you didn't do and enjoy the journey because like I used to be a commercial real estate broker in my life for a while. Like I was a managing director of a large real estate company. And one of the things that I told myself that I really love this because I always want to enjoy what I'm doing. So I told
Mhm.
myself, I really love this. What I really loved was the transaction. I was getting a dopamine hit from the transaction. And going through and really trying to think about, you know, what am I really contributing? And what I'm contributing is I'm making wealthy people more wealthy. How is that? How does that feel? And am I getting the kind of satisfaction that I want from what I'm doing? And I think that that is going back and what you were saying before is that knowing yourself. I believe that a lot of people end up doing things because they convince themselves that this is something they should be doing. They're getting a lot of pleasure. And then 15 years go by, they're sitting in the same desk, doing the same thing, go in the office and saying, oh shit, only if I would have done this. And my thing is that going back to the journey, just do different things. Don't settle in life because when you're looking at yourself when you're towards the end, you're going to have regrets that you didn't try certain things. And
Mhm.
the failure of success is going to be, did I actually take action and do something? Not you achieved or didn't achieve. You don't want to have regrets. You want to do that. And when you're not in this world, your legacy, who cares? I mean, you're not here anymore. Your legacy is your family, your kids, your values, whatever you contributed in the world, and then you're not here. And I think the idea is just enjoy the journey and to kind of create a grade for yourself all the time of the things, oh, I need to do this. I need to be bigger. I need to just, having a sense of I've gotten to a point where I've gotten this. Yes, I can do more, but there's a journey along the way. And look how many wonderful people I met along the way. Look how many wonderful things I've done. And I think we have a tendency to be really hard on ourselves at times. At least
Mhm.
I do as well. And it's, we talked about forgiveness in the beginning. You got to start with yourself. You got to forgive yourself and be kind to yourself. I always talk about with people, well, would you ever talk to your best friend? Would you talk to your kid like that? Would you talk to your favorite family members? Do you talk to your parents? The answer is no. Why are you having that conversation with yourself? You should be your own best friend. You should treat yourself like the closest person that's in your life. And if you're having that conversation, like pause and catch yourself and stop having that conversation. Treat yourself with love. And if you do that, you can do that for others.
Yeah, I agree, and I've been really focusing on how I talk to myself more and more lately because I don't think we realize how much we actually talk down about ourselves to ourselves. It's quite a bit. In fact, yesterday's guest, Jason, who I mentioned earlier, he on his Instagram profile, and I called him out on this. He had like just an average guy with an amazing wife, and I said like, "Do you think your wife's amazing?" He's like, absolutely. Do you think your wife thinks that you're amazing? Yeah, probably. Then why do you call yourself average?
Yeah.
Why do you call yourself an average guy? You know what I mean? Like if you say it too much, you're gonna start believing it, and you're not. You're an amazing guy as well. So reframe your Instagram profile. But I think that you're absolutely right. This this kind of I want to go back to your beginning, and then I want to end on music because I love how with all of this that you have going on, there's this really cool underlying current of music that you and I initially talked about and bonded over. So we know your heritage now. You said Lithuanian. Uh, Vilnius, is that where you grew up or
Yeah.
somewhere
I
else?
was born in Vilnius. Yeah.
What was your upbringing like? Like, what was your family like life? I want to know, like, how much of that might have contributed to the successful man that you are today.
I'm an only child. Like I said, I immigrated here we left 1979, 1980. Uh, America boycotted the Olympics in Moscow. I was the enemy of the state. you know, we I'm not Russian, but
Mhm.
we don't know geography really well in America, so you're lumped together as a Russian, even though Lithuanian, okay, and
Yeah.
I endured a lot of your mom wears combat boots and all this other stuff, but as a child, as a kid, 7, 8 years old, we would drive around and get furniture and stuff from people's garbage. So, my dad and I, we thought it was fun. My dad's like, "Oh, somebody threw out this TV. Wow, they're throwing out this TV in America." He's was an engineer, so he like tweaked it and fixed it. Now we have a TV. Um, I slept on mattresses that we found in the trash. So it was really difficult. I think it probably was difficult for my parents. My dad had two master's degrees, and my mom was doing accounting, and he was an engineer. It was difficult for them to learn language, find their way in a brand new country, and then for me, like I was a latchkey kid. You go to school by yourself, you come back by yourself, and you go out and play with your friends, grab your bike and do all that stuff, and just be home when the lights go on, the street lights go on, and the, but you sit at dinner with your family. Usually, you have a discussion about your day. My dad, no discussion. When we're eating, we're silent. And so there's no discussion. And my AD, I would just move around and in the chair, and he would yell at me. And sometimes there'd be some violence there as well. But the one thing that I remember what we could do is play Jeopardy. So Jeopardy would be on, and I might the answer, and then he would yell at me or that I didn't know the capital of a certain country or something like that. How do you not know that? So, uh, but uh, so going back to kind of music connection in a way, I spent a lot of time in my room. And the other thing is, I live in Philly, and Philly in the summertime is very hot and humid, cold in the wintertime. So, like, weather is not great. But my mom hated air conditioning, just despised it. She would sneeze. She said she had an allergy towards it. So at nighttime, when I would sleep, I had a fan in my window that would blow hot air. So I couldn't sleep. Sleeping was always an issue. But this is where music came in. I had a radio and a tape recorder, and I would listen all night under my covers, and I would put my tape recorder to the radio, and I would record things, and I would write it down. I have to, you know, who sings this song, and I start making mixtapes and all that stuff. And that was the way until I was so tired I would just fall asleep because it was hot. That's the way I started getting into music, and just like that was my thing that allowed me to sort of survive all this stuff. And that was my connection to music. So as a kid, I had lots of friends. My friends were like my brothers. I didn't have any siblings. So my friends were,
Mhm.
I had two best friends. We always hung out together. My parents would go away on the weekends to see their parents who lived in New York. So I would be left alone, and we would party. We would discover alcohol and weed and all this other stuff. And my house was the party house in the weekend. Steal my parents'
'Cause the
cars.
parents weren't there.
No, all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I get a lot of trouble. I went to 3 different high schools and, uh, got kicked out of my last one for getting into an altercation with my teacher. So yeah, it was fun.
Hey, man, you gotta start somewhere, and you just gotta keep showing up and doing the work and reinventing, as you, have said before. Um, Music sounded like it was an escape, a tool, something that helped you, not just the reality of the heat, but also, like, maybe the home environment emotionally. Does that sound right?
Completely. It was my escape, and I didn't I listened to everything, and I was always trying to figure out what it was, who sings it, what's, who the artist is, and as much as I could, hyper focus on that. And then
Mm.
the pleasure I was getting from it was sharing it with other people. Like, if I can be a tastemaker, if I can turn you on, "Hey, have you heard this?" "No." Let me make you a tape. And it's not even girls, which I did as well, but let me make you a tape of these songs. and people were like, "Oh man, this is a great tape. This is great." So this is the thing, and I kept trying to get more and more. And I would go to record stores. My record store of choice was Tower Records, and I would spend hours there. And they had listening stations, and they had the music machine. I would just discover things. And then, after my parents, I skipped over the story where I got kicked out of the house and I was homeless and all that stuff. But I can go back to that if you want. But if once I got a job at Tower Records, that opened up a whole new thing with music. Like I was surrounded by people that are similar to me. They were passionate about music. That's all we talked about was music. I got to discover, you know, different music that I've never heard of. I got jazz and the big band stuff and the Caribbean music and all the and then became we became sort of tastemakers because what we played in the store, people were like, "Oh, what's that?" And now labels started coming in. We're like, "Oh, well, why don't you play this more in the store? And we'll, get you more of these, and then we'll give you tickets to the show and all that stuff." So that was really, really cool. That expanded my breadth of knowledge and my music collection too.
That's so cool. I mean, it sounds like we should do a future episode on just like the industry from your perspective, working in Tower Records and like the schmoozing and the labels and the shows you went to. Cause I know there's so much. And then there's also the record of the day post that you have going on. But that gives me much more context about you and how you got into music. Let me take a quick step back. I'm really curious about the father relationship, because relationships are hard. People, it's difficult to have relationships, period. Even the best relationships have the hardest of times, and not everyone understands every relationship because of culture and upbringing. But it sounds like, as hard as things might have been with your dad, and I'm sure some of that was, instilled in him from his father, there was still also a lot of fun and love and respect. Like, it sounds almost like it was a really two-sided relationship of like iron fist and difficulty, but also good times, finding furniture together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, as a little kid, a little bit, but not really. I really didn't connect with my dad, my mom. My mom tried to save me all the time, but
Mm,
they didn't get me. And they didn't get me for many different reasons. They come from the Soviet Union. My dad was born right after World War II. They had to try to find food. Uh, there was still like artillery that wasn't exploded in their yards. It was
wow.
difficult. And, it was more his mom than his dad. His dad was a veteran. He was injured during the war, but his mom would be, the disciplinarian. So he just repeated that pattern with me. And the first concert I ever went to was Pink Floyd with my dad and his brother and my two friends. And it was like 100,000 people at JFK Stadium in Philly that doesn't exist anymore. And that was the first and last concert that I ever went to with him because he's like, "Oh, I don't want people like spilling beer on me and all that stuff." So we didn't really have that kind of friendship and connection. We had it later as adults, and cannabis I didn't talk about either was my go to medicine for my ADD, and they thought that the cannabis was the thing that was making me angry. It's like every single time, you've been smoking again, you're angry. I'm like, it was the complete opposite. It's when I find cannabis, it actually relaxed me and got me out of this whole mode of, anger and tension, and they thought of the opposite. So, at some
Mm.
point, when I was just about 18, they called the cops on me and tried to have me arrested. And there was 2 female officers that came in, and I had a little bit of weed, and my dad told me, "Don't bring it in the house." So I didn't bring it in the house. I had it in the car underneath my seat, like a little pouch, not much of anything. And they said they threw it out, and the cops were like, "Oh, we should get you to the like, and nothing's gonna happen. It's fine." And she goes, He's a smartass. If it was my kid, I would kick him to the curb." And my dad literally gave me 5 minutes. I got a bag, and he kicked me out the door. And the interesting thing, irony is my parents both consume products that my company has patents on now. super proud of me. And we actually consumed cannabis together in Jamaica once, maybe more than once. So complete shift in mindset around that. Our relationship now, I talk to my dad every day. Our relationship now is better than it's ever been when I was a kid. And it takes two people. He raised his hand and said, I'm sorry. There was no book written, even though there were lots of books written, but we didn't know. I made mistakes as a parent. And he's very complimentary of my parenting skills. And I told him once, he got really pissed. I'm like, well, it's because I just do the opposite of what you did with me. He didn't like that at all. But the idea is, you know, it's this communication of, we had some issues. Let's get past them. We have this much life left, whatever that is. And let's see if we can get past that and just live our lives differently. And right now, my
Mhm.
dad's like, my close friend. We talk all the time and it's fine. But growing up, yeah, it was definitely difficult.
You know, you piqued my interest at the very beginning of this chat when you said, like, you were talking about therapy and you're like, oh, they asked my parents to come in. And I was like, wow, like there's so many, most parents wouldn't even like want to do that, let alone be okay with therapy or anything in general. I think that a lot of parents from our generation or our generations and your generation's parents are not like really hip on that stuff as much as we might be. What was the moment? Like, how did you and your dad both have that, let's leave the past behind? How did you create, like, how did you have the grace to create a space for you guys to change and heal and forge ahead?
Yeah. So let me tell you the story. So I was going to this therapist less. I originally went to get couples therapy with my ex wife and I. And after the first session, she was like, I'm not going back to him. He's taking your side. I'm like, okay. I said, I really like this guy. And he became like, I've never had a therapist like that before or since. He really liked me. He would kiss me on my forehead. He's an older guy and he was just such a sweet man, but really, really helpful. Like really wanted to make this work. And he said one day,
Mhm.
he goes, would you mind bringing your parents in? So I went to my parents and I said, hey, I'm going to therapy. Would you come in? Oh, we don't believe in that stuff. I said, I know you don't believe in it. Just do me a favor for me. Could you do that? And I said, fine, we'll do that for you. So I'll paint the scene. I was sitting across my parents were sitting on a little couch. I was sitting probably like across from my mom. Les, who was my therapist, was sitting next to me across from my dad. So it's four of us looking at each other. And my dad was dismissive the entire time. Like Les was asking questions, the therapist was asking me, he was dismissive. And my mom just didn't say much of anything. And then my dad goes, you keep asking me about Len. You want to know about Len? Let me tell you a story. I did not remember. I remember after he started telling the story, I remember bits and pieces, but I didn't remember it before. He goes, Len was maybe 4 years old, maybe five, and I was still in Lithuania. So we lived in this apartment building, and there was a little street, and there was a store. And I went with my mom to the store across the street, and I wanted her to buy me something. She didn't buy it, and I had a fit. I actually had a fit, and I ended up leaving the store. So I walked out and went to my neighbor's house who used to watch my parents were at work or whatever. And my mom didn't see me, and she was like, "Where did he go?" And the person in the store said, he left. So she knew where I was, and she went and got me, I guess. And she said, like, wait till your dad gets home. So my dad's telling the story. He got home, and it was time for my punishment. And he got the belt, and he was hitting me. And he goes, I was hitting him, and he wouldn't cry. So I would hit him harder, and he wouldn't cry. And Len is a real man because, as you can see, when I would hit him, he doesn't cry. He's not weak. He's strong. At that time, as I was sitting there in therapy, like I had started getting a tear coming down. I was like, oh, really, man, you actually thought that by doing that, you're making me a man, but what you did was you suppressed all my emotion because emotion became weakness to me. And at that moment, I was like, you're not going to have that power over me anymore. It's not going to happen. I'm going to be comfortable with being emotional, not emotional, whatever that is. And then I had a conversation with him and we sat down, we talked. And that's when he sort of apologized and said, made mistakes, wasn't perfect. And there's nothing I can do about the past, but I'm sorry. And then let's see if we can work things out going forward. And that was sort of the moment where I said, yeah, it completely let go. It's like you're holding on to something and all of a sudden it's
Mhm.
gone. You don't feel it. I remember it. I can talk about it, but I don't have an emotional connection to it anymore. And it used to be like, if even if it's brought up, I couldn't sit through, like, even when I was married, we would come to my parents' house in Philly for dinner, and it was like Sundays, and it would end up a fight, and I would be leaving all the time because I had this resentment and anger. Once it's gone, it's gone.
That's so beautiful. I'm so happy you shared that. I appreciate it. I was welling up. You can't not picture the two of you guys like burying the hatchet and really starting a new chapter. That's a beautiful thing. And all it takes is conversation, man. Going back to the whole point of this, really all it takes is conversation. And I've been using this balloon analogy lately. To rise up, you have to lighten the load, right? So the more you can take the baggage and snip it off, the more you can get rid of that baggage, the lighter you'll be, the higher you will rise, maybe vibrationally or also physically, like in terms of your career and all these amazing things. So it sounds like you guys got rid of a lot of baggage and then allowed your relationship and individually your yourselves to rise up. So good for you. I'm happy for you, Len. Um, like I said, you and I could probably wax like forever on music and all this stuff, but I wanted to end with something that I guess ties back to the beginning in a fun way. I love this line and I want you to talk about it a bit. The truth is that I've always been fascinated by one thing, how seemingly unrelated systems connect. Where did you get that? Like, was it Lego? When did that start? And, what is it for you?
It has to do with me talking to other people and letting them know how I sort of think about things, and they don't think about it in the same way.
Mm,
And, reflecting back to me is like, well, you don't see that? Or like, no. I'm like, well, it's clear to me. So knowing that my mind works differently, it's the most difficult part of that about that is expectations of others. And this is the thing that I'm still working on that a lot. Even as, a CEO of a company, I have certain expectations. And even in my partner and other people work with me, I'm very efficient. Like, um, I'll give you an example. So I was at a birthday. My good friend Kimberly, she had her birthday, and she decided to do this uh, instead of me toasting to her or us toasting to her. She wanted to read a little thing about everybody that was there. Like,
mm,
this is you're my friend that I is for based on this. Like, I guess she compartmentalizes her friends in different way things, or says whatever's nice about them. And for me, she said, for Len, he's the only person that I know I can call at 4 a.m. and he'll be there. He is reliable and he's always going to be there. He's somebody I can count on. And to me, I take pride in that. And the reason why is because I am going to be a person of my word. I wrote 4 things. They're going to be complete. If I have to do it till 3 a.m., I'm going to do it because this is my mindset. I'm going to have to do that. And the whole connection of different things that are unrelated, they're connecting. That's your superpower as a neurodivergent. And sometimes it's subconscious. Like, you don't know. I worked at Price Waterhouse, PwC. I was a commercial real
mhm.
estate broker. I have a genetics company. It seems completely unrelated. There are 3 separate things. Like, how do you go from this to this to this? To me, they're completely related. And I utilize a lot of those things, even subconsciously, because I pull on different things and that makes your whole self. So that awareness of how these things fit when they seemingly are not supposed to fit, I think that's the superpower that we lean into. And people who are neurodivergent, they think this is a detriment. I have a million different things going on. We'll have 5 different things. It's okay. But see how those 5 things relate. See the commonality of them. I'll give you one more example of how this
Sure.
neurodivergent related to music. So I have a very extensive vinyl collection. And at one point, I realized like I have stacks of vinyl in my room and I need to organize it. So ADD brain kept putting it off. I'm going to do it. Now I made a decision. The decision is I'm going to do this. Well, the first thing to do, it's overwhelming. How do I do it? I need a system. So when I was at Tower Records, I was a buyer and everything is genre based. So I'm going to do my rock and I'm going to do my jazz and all this. I said, I'm not going to do any of that stuff. I'm going to do everything in alphabetical order, A to Z, no matter what. That's first. So then I said, okay, now I have a system. The second thing is I need a dopamine reward. This is daunting work. I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm going to quit if I don't have a reward. So the reward is I get to pull out a record I haven't listened to this album in a while. I'm going to put it on my turntable as I'm doing this and I'm enjoying this. Oh shit, I haven't listened to this in a while. This is cool. So now I can't wait to listen to something else because that's my dopamine reward. And the third is still a daunting task. It's a lot. It's a lot of records. How do I do this? So I decided I'm going to chunk it. So I'm going to take a stack that I can hold in one hand and I'm going to do that first. I'm going to complete it. So I feel a sense of completion. I did something. I achieved something. Now I'm going to take another stack. And I started doing this and over like a week or so, I was done. And that's the thing that really you going back to, it's not just I looking at different things that are unrelated and relating them, but it's also taking action of those things and creating systems and guardrails for yourself that make you
Mhm.
efficient to work within the confines of what your superpower is. And the more people that can do that, though they can become part of that 80% that are billionaires instead of saying, I'm going to get ready because I'm going to perfect it. And that's one of the detriments that people with neurodivergence have is trying to figure out an angle of how to start. And my thing is
Yeah.
start, just go.
I love that. And it's funny, no matter, I think the lesson is no matter whether you're neurodivergent or not, regardless of who you are in this world, there's two things that are true. You have to communicate. Conversation in whatever form you're able to. Conversation is so important with yourself and then outwardly with everyone else. And you just have to do the work. There's no shortcut. There are tips and tricks to maybe make things faster and more efficient. But at the end of the day, you got to take those steps and do the work. I always said this thing, and I learned it during therapy when I first tried therapy in university, and I was dealing with fear of contamination. And the person I was seeing said, like, dude, all you have to do is baby steps. And every time you take a baby step, it's a little bit easier because then you can remember the steps you've already taken. And then really all you have to do is get to the halfway point. Because if you're swimming across a lake, once you get to the halfway point, it's just as easy to get to the other side as it is to go back. So set a goal of the midway point, and once you get there, you're going to be just flying for the rest of the time. And that for me was my way of doing what you just said, which is just go. Started with communication, and then I learned that I just needed to get her done, so to speak.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for your time, for who you are, for giving me the ability to actually chat with you after the mad delay in responsiveness. You're an inspiration, man, and this has been so good. Do me a favor. I always love to have the last word with the guest. So give me some Len May today that people can take away for tomorrow.
Well, I just think it's this notion of going back and saying that give yourself love. The only thing I can relate to is, I had this conversation with my daughter all the time. And I always told her, I don't care about your grades. And she's been a straight A student forever. Didn't care about it. That's up to you. Uh, I don't really I want you to be successful in your life, but this is your home. You always have this home. You have no pressure. Just live your life and enjoy your life because, you blink and you're going to end up being 54. So enjoy your 20s, enjoy all of it. And that's the lesson that, to leave with everyone, that you don't know where you're going to end up tomorrow. So try to enjoy and do something today that makes a difference, even if it's small, to the world and to yourself, and treat yourself with kindness. And, I'm saying this out loud because I say it to myself all the time. It's very, very difficult. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to succeed, and we put a lot of things, we have goals and all this other stuff. But there's only one goal that's most important. When you have your to-do list, there's all these things you're trying to do in business. When you're sick, you have one single goal, is to get better. So all these things you're busy doing, make sure that you focus on your health first. That is the most important way to give yourself love, because all these to-dos and everything else won't matter if you don't have your health. And that is the one thing that I want to leave everybody with. Focus on your health. There's no other currency in this world that matters more than your health.